Shelley Johnson is the founder of HR firm Boldside and a self-confessed HR rebel. She's led human resources teams for more than a decade, coaching executives and business owners to become the leader they wish they had, to build a dream team and to create a culture that has people applying for jobs. She also hosts her own podcast, My Millennial Career, which is all about helping people build a career they love. She's qualified to host that, by the way, because she loves her career. Shelley, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Cats or dogs?
Okay. Can we do a confession?
Yes.
Neither.
What?
Okay, and now this
You
is...
hate animals?
Well, and this is the thing, right? Because when you say that, people are like, you must be a serial killer.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not a pet person. So how do you guys feel?
You know what's worse than a crazy cat lady? Someone who doesn't like either.
Yeah. Shelley, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Game over. That's it. We're finished. We're done.
Wrap this up.
Wow. I was not expecting that answer. There you go. I mean, it makes sense. People either love cats or dogs or not at all.
Not at all. That's it.
What's an HR rebel?
Oh, okay. So a HR rebel is someone who doesn't like policies and procedures at all. Because HR people seem to gravitate towards these boring things of compliance, policies, procedures, and anything to do with fair work. And for me, I'm just like, can we just push that all to the side and purely focus on team? Just team and culture.
Hence the name.
Hence the name.
Old side of HR. Is
That's
that right?
So we're kind of thinking about how do you rebrand HR from being this boring kind of thing that, like the principal's office, where no one wanted to go to the principal's office.
Very familiar with the principal's office.
Are you?
I was.
I can imagine. I feel that makes sense.
The principal had an office?
Not anymore, because it was always like, Jay, don't bother coming to my office. You're in trouble right now.
Well, that's what HR is like. HR is often seen as you go to HR and it's the place that, no one wants to go to. It's like the principal's office. And for me, I find that so problematic because HR at its core is about how do you create epic teams that people don't want to leave and how do you build leaders that people want to follow?
HR is the police. The people that stop all the fun. You say something not quite right, you're going to HR this, HR that. Well, this sounds like the fun side of HR.
You say that though, but there are reasons for the documents, reasons for the policies, reasons that we have to have these rules, and you can't just throw them out because you don't like them. But how do you then incorporate those important documents and law into making sure you've got a place people want to be working?
Yeah, and I think those things are like below the surface, but they should never be the focus. We need to have them right, but then we don't want to be consistently ramming policies and procedures down people's mouths, because if we're doing that, that's indicative of another problem. So that suggests to me, if we're continually getting the code of conduct out and talking people through it, that suggests a culture problem, not, and like you said, Jay, the policing. There was this article in HBR, it would have been about 7 years ago, and they said it's time to blow up HR and build something new. And they were so right, because HR have had this reputation in the business of we're the police. But really, when you think about your people, if your organisation succeeds or fails, it's so dependent on the people. Like, it is largely influenced by the people you have in leadership, the people you get on your team, and the ones that actually catch and understand the culture. But if we're only focusing on those lower value, like just baseline things of policies, procedures, and making sure we pay people right, we never get to the higher value strategic parts of how do we make this environment a place where people want to work, they show up, they perform, they kick their goals, and they actually love what they do.
Is that what they're teaching at uni these days when it comes to doing a degree in HR? Or have you started to move away from the old school and the mainstream?
Yeah, it's a really good question. HR, how do I answer this? Because I've grown up in this industry, right? And I'm always feeling like you have to break off that old mold of HR. And there's other industries that have this dynamic. Like I'd say accountants have it as well. So an industry that's been entrenched in a certain way of doing things
Has a stigma.
has a stigma attached to it.
When you
of-
say to someone, I'm an accountant or an HR professional.
yeah, and they think, oh, you're a rule follower. Whereas what we want to bring to this space is the actual fun, crazy weirdness that is people. Like you guys have both been on teams for so long. You've seen the best and worst of people. Like people are weird.
People are weird. They are different, but that's the unique part.
Exactly.
People make all the difference. I know when we talk with our clients, the biggest difference to what you do is people, the client, you know, in this case, employees. People are very different, but they are the ones who set the culture, right? Now, culture is typically the unwritten rules. Really, that's what culture is. It's the unwritten rules, the norms in, you know, the habits, you know, the things that you can and can't do without having a rule in play. So how do you change that in a good way, or how do you, you know, send it in a direction that's more productive? How do you move that without setting rules?
Yeah, you're right. So how do we change it? We first have to know where we're at. So where are we currently? What is working and not working in our culture? And the best way that I look at this, and I think it's Ray Dalio who says in his book, what problems are we tolerating? And your culture is really driven by the problems that you tolerate and the things that you walk past. So if you have a problem of gossip, the reason that exists is because the leaders have walked past that and have allowed that and tolerated that behaviour. And so what we want to do is we want to understand what are all the problems within our team that we're tolerating. That really, if we address those, how much more impact will we have as a business if we actually remove some of those behaviours or say that's not who we are. And the first thing, if for any leaders and business owners listening right now, I want you to diagnose where you're at. Really get into that like space, get up close and personal with the pain points. What's not working for us? What behaviours have we allowed to exist? Are there any brilliant jerks? And I love talking about brilliant.
Love that.
So
What makes a jerk brilliant?
So, like, okay, how old are we all? Well, don't say, but what generation are you?
I just scrape into the millennials.
Millennial also.
Okay, we're all millennials, so we all know this reference.
It's all okay.
We're in the same zone.
We're not
Because the
gonna
Gen
offend
Zs
anyone.
wouldn't know this reference. But in Happy Gilmore, Shooter McGavin, remember Shooter McGavin?
I eat
He
pieces
is-
of, yeah.
Yeah, he's a brilliant jerk. So
Right.
Yes.
he's got ego, like so much ego, but he's so talented. And on our teams, often we tolerate the brilliant jerks and they can be the downfall in our team because they bring all this ego. They might bring entitlement, some behaviors that we really don't want to have on our team. And what that does is it has this ripple effect. So one brilliant jerk, or Atlassian describe it as a bad apple. So they've done a lot of research on this idea of bad apples and how they spoil a team. Just one. You could have a team of 20 people, one bad apple. Because they get results, so let's think about Shooter McGavin. He's like, you know, got the jacket. I don't remember
I believe
what
that's Mr. Gilmore's jacket.
yeah, I love Happy Gilmore so much. But when we've got this dynamic on our team and we tolerate it because we're like, they get really good results, they get the sale, they land the deal, they really do a lot of hard work, but they're causing all this angst within our team, that is a big problem. And that's a culture problem. It's about how do we shape the culture that we want and how do we say to our team, these are the behaviours that are absolutely non-negotiable for us. And these are the behaviours that if you show up with ego, well, that's a deal breaker.
Shooter McGavin, right? Let's reference that then. How do we change Shooter McGavin? How do we nurture Shooter McGavin? Or do you just get rid of Shooter McGavin?
Good question. Oh, yeah. So my first step in any of these scenarios is we need to have the conversation. I think it's quite unfair to assume that, well, someone must have told them before. Someone must have already told them they're a jerk. And the other assumption we make when we just remove that person is we assume they can't change. And I think that's a big call. Like if we had problems that no one had given us feedback on, like you think about your own areas for growth and things that you want to develop, if no one gave you feedback and just wrote you off, that would be pretty painful.
I've had this conversation with a boss in the past where I said, I wish I knew then. Why wasn't it said earlier? Let's do, like, I want to change that, you know?
And I think that's a big part of our role as leaders is we need to recognise we actually owe it to our employees to tell them the truth, even when it's hard.
Not all jerks will respond well, though.
Exactly. Yes. So we need to first have the conversation, and we want to lay it out in a way of going, hey, this behaviour, it doesn't align with our culture. It's not who we are. So what I need you to be doing more of is X. And that looks like over the next 2 months or however long you want to work on it, we're going to work on this. And I want to see you changing. If not, then we'll have to work out if this is the right place for you. And then you use that time to decide, can they level up? Can they change? Can they grow? And if they're not a grower or if they have no desire or self-awareness to see what you're saying, then look, maybe you have to move them on.
So the foundation of your culture needs to be established before that, because they need to align with the vision or the culture. And if it's not clear, they're confused, you're confused, the rest of the team are confused, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So if we go back to what we were talking about before, we first diagnose where we're at, current state. Then we move to define what do we want our culture to look like. And this is about getting really clear. And I know you said before, Jay, it's those unwritten rules. If you're okay with this, I'd probably disagree. I would say that your culture needs to be as clear as possible. This is who we are. Here's our 5 values. When these are happening well, this is what it looks like. So for a client I was working with recently, one of their values was excellence. And for me, I think about excellence and I kind of think, well, firstly, that's a bit of a boring value. We can do better than that. And the second thing I think is, what do we want staff, how do we want staff to understand that value? So instead we reshaped it to be excellence over perfection, because what was happening in that business is they had designers and creatives and like quite a range of staff, and they were all perfectionists. And so they weren't getting stuff done. They just weren't delivering. So when we spell out the culture and we really define it, we say excellence over perfection, which means we get stuff done. We make it happen. We deliver an excellent result, but it can be 80%. It doesn't need to be 150%. And when you spell out those core values in a really clear way, you've got an anchor point. So then when you have problems, like you have that perfectionist behaviour show up on your team, you go back to your values statement and you go back to the behaviours that sit underneath it and you say, hey, Joe, I can see you doing that perfectionist thing and that's stopping us from making progress, and that's a problem.
You've an interesting case study in this because you're an HR professional that works with others when it comes to HR, but you've also got your own business. So you've got your own culture at Boldside. What are your values?
Yeah, so my values are, and I've got this thing, the way that I've done it is who we are and who we're not, and really try to clarify this is who we are when we're at our best, this is who we're not when we're at our worst. For me, one of the main ones is who we are when we're smart, but we're not know-it-alls. So I want to make that distinction of how we show up is we're intelligent, we know our stuff, but I would never want people to relate to us in a way where they feel like we're know-it-alls, because that's the risk. So you want to show in your values, what does it look like at its best, but with every value there can be a dark side. So when it's like overemphasized, it can be, smart could be pseudo-intelligence. It could be you're a know-it-all, you're the type of person that rams ideas down other people's throats. And so when I think about everyone's culture, I think about it in those two lenses, who we are, the 5 things that represent who we are, and the 5 things that represent who we're not. That's just one example. But the other thing we do is that it's part of our culture, Dan, is fun. And that is for us a big point of difference because, as I mentioned up front, like HR has been like notoriously boring, or the police. So how do we make it fun? How do we make it really relatable for people and engaging? Because these concepts around people and team, they are fun and they're so interesting when you get into the core of it. So how do we make that really interesting for people to kind of consume and engage with?
Because every office wants the Google office. They want the fun environment. They want to they want a team that's having a ball and you want to be seen in that way. How do you run the fine line between fun versus, say, productive? How do you juggle that? Because sometimes production might seem clinical and boring, and fun could be perceived as not productive, but a great environment. How do you find the balance?
Yeah, it's striking those tensions between things that can be true at the same time. So one of the things that I think when it comes to having fun at work is, have you ever worked in those places where there's like forced fun?
Yes.
You have 25 minutes of fun time. I remember as a kid at school when the teacher says, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking. All you want to do is talk. The minute they go, okay, you've got 6 minutes to talk to each other, you go, I have nothing to say now. It's just like that, right? Now is your time to have
I
fun.
always pictured the blindfold guided tour of another team getting pushed around the office, or this is deemed fun. Like, that's not fun to me.
This is team building. You will be a better team that is bonded after this. It doesn't work, right?
That is exactly what I'm talking about. And no one wants that. So how do we look for, and I think it comes down to our recruitment as well. Like, how do we look for people that bring fun naturally? So that when you're in those peak seasons that are super busy, there's still this essence of fun. It doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be forced, but it's like, it actually just comes out of who we are. So we show up in those, and some of the best teams that I've worked with, they bring this out and bring it to life in everything they do. It doesn't have to be like that forced fun thing of like, now we're going to get together as a team and go for drinks and we'll make it really fun. No, it just is who we are. We show up, we recruit for people who have this fun vibe, who don't take themselves too seriously. And that's what helps us to make sure that this culture reflects that.
Have you found ways then in recruiting, in interviews, for example, where you can ask a question or bring something out in someone that goes, that's that personality trait we're after?
Yeah. So one of the things I would do is get really clear about, let's use a different value example. So one of the values in the business, let's say it is growth. So we've got this value where we really want to grow as a team and we want people who are growers. What I would do in the interview process is I'd ask really targeted questions to assess if that person has that. And one of the two questions that really work well, the first is, what's the toughest feedback you've ever received? Because if you're sitting across from someone and the toughest feedback they've ever received was in relation to an attention to detail mistake, I'd be pushing on that. I'd be going further, because one of the things that I'd want to see is those growth areas that hurt. When someone picks up a feedback point for you and it's like, oh, this hits home. Like, this is like, so for me, one was that I'm abrupt. And I'm like, oh, ouch, yeah. I feel that on a deep level, and so what are the things then? I would bring that up in an interview openly and honestly and say, well, one of my growth areas has been working on how I communicate in a way that doesn't come across as abrupt or hurtful. And when you're recruiting for someone, you want to know that the person has self-awareness, but you also want to know that they're a grower, and then ask follow-up questions. Okay, well, how did you work on that? Like, Shelley, how did you work on your abruptness? You want to dig into those issues, and then you can start to see, well, this person is a grower. This person can A, identify their own weaknesses, and B, they work on it. They develop it.
Self-awareness is something that a lot of people don't have. I think it's a great skill. It's interesting because when I do an interview, I usually do a two-stage approach. The first interview, I don't even talk about what they can do. I have no idea. People actually go, do you want to see my work? I'm like, no, because I just want to know who they are. I want to know, can they get out of bed of a morning? Do they have a good attitude? What are they interested in? Because that's the environment that usually, it portrays what the environment's going to look like. And I don't know, then you can get to the doing, because there's so many people with such a wide range of skills. But if they can't get out of bed of a morning, or they're an absolute bore, or they're annoying to them, you got to protect that culture. Like
you're kind of checking on personality straight up then,
straight
right?
away.
It doesn't even matter what
All
your
about
CV.
personality.
If you've applied, you've already shown me you're interested and or can do it. So let's just see if you and I gel and go from there.
Because I've done it the other way. In the beginning, when I first started employing people, I did it horribly wrong. You'd get these people with all these great skills, but they couldn't do what they were supposed to do just purely because they didn't have the energy or the drive or the passion. I don't know. Is that a bit of an approach that you like to implement as well?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're assessing for, what I think you're assessing for is values alignment. So you're assessing for, do they have the things that work well on my team? Now, that can be hard to do, again, if you don't have your culture defined, if you don't have this clear sense of who are we as a business, who are we as an organisation. So I would go in, and if you have those like top 5 values clarified, have a question based on each one. Now, I know for some people they'll be balking thinking, oh, that's too structured. But I can tell you now, structure helps in an interview, because what you're doing is you're making sure you're not overlooking those core value drivers for you. You're not making assumptions about the person. You're actually giving them the chance to show who they are, how they contribute, how they fit. And I love for you, Jay, like one of the things that I vibe from you is that you're super high energy, high drive.
People fear that too.
But that's part of your business, and so that's part of the culture that you set. When you're interviewing, your first questions are like, tell me like what you're doing, like how are you bringing energy, how are you showing up? Like you're asking about your culture, because first and foremost, we want people who can contribute to our cultural health, and then we get onto the technical skills from there.
Some people are rock stars in interviews. They interview well, they sell themselves well, it can go for 20 minutes or an hour and they nail it. And yet they're still brilliant jerks. Have you figured out how to deal with that yet?
Yeah, this is awesome. Really, this is a huge dynamic that so many businesses encounter. And they're, it's kind of like, I guess warning bells for me are is when someone has a lot of charisma. So I look out for that, those really charismatic people, and they can show up really well in an interview. The key for me when you've got those interviews with the rock stars that you're saying is do another 2. Do another 2 interviews, because it's difficult to hold it down for extended periods. So you might do a kind of chat at a cafe, or you might do an initial interview at your office, but then go for a walk. Do something different. Take them to the pub, have a drink.
Break them out of the interview mold.
Exactly, because an interview is a really artificial environment. So if you're thinking about an interview and go, when did you last sit down potentially with 2 other people grilling you with questions like an interrogation?
Yeah. Doesn't happen very often, does it?
And so the people that thrive in that have either really well rehearsed, or they could be like the brilliant jerk that shows up with all this charisma, but really underneath it, you're like, can you actually do this job? So like you said, Dan, break them out of that mold and, take them to the pub, get a drink, go to a cafe, go for a walk. Patrick Lencioni, an amazing author and speaker on this idea of teams, he tells his team, he tells people when they're recruiting, take them to your kid's soccer game, or
make them stand beside you on the sideline.
Yeah, or take them to the grocery store. Like, do boring things, because you'll get an idea of
how
what
they
they're
cope
like,
and what they say,
and like you get them out of that kind of pretense, and you really see the real them.
I can't imagine being
My next job interview is in a supermarket.
Yeah, at Coles, and you're like checking out, but it goes to show that the interview is an artificial environment. So if we want to see the real person, we need to try and make it more of a conversation and less formal.
That's so true. So you can actually interview somebody, have a great conversation, and if you do that, it's a conversation. They drop their guard, they lose the persona, and then all of a sudden you just go, great, this is the real you now. And that's what you're after. You want to see truth, yeah?
You don't want to feel like it's a performance. If you get this vibe of performance, or you get a vibe of a facade, that's a red flag. So listen to that. You get those gut vibes. And the other thing that you should really look out for is when what are the questions that they ask at the end? So for me, those questions at the end are really telling. I want to know that person that I'm interviewing is interested in my business.
Okay, so they always ask at the end, and you should have something ready to go.
Yeah, you should.
Right, not just how much will I be paid?
Exactly. And I'm laughing because I've seen this so many times, where you get to the end of the interview and someone sits there and says, and you go, oh, do you have any questions for us? And they're like, Nah, you've answered all my questions. Wait, I literally didn't answer a single question. I just asked you 50 questions.
The 50 questions I asked you told you everything you need to know about me. That's a bit disturbing, right?
Exactly, yeah. So listen to those questions at the end, and if sometimes nerves play a part, so giving people the space or even giving them a heads up of the things you're going to ask for in advance helps them to come in prepared. Now, what's the risk of that? Well, they go and Google stuff. Well, is that a problem? Like, I don't see that as a problem. I more want them to come in and feel as natural as possible and as safe as possible, because that's when you're going to get the best conversation.
You also can't Google, tell us about the toughest feedback you've received, right? Like, that. I mean, there might be ways of Googling what's the best answer to that, but if you're going to be authentic, it's not going to come
100%,
through, right?
Yeah.
So one thing's interviewing well, getting the right people, interviewing the right people, but how do you attract the right people as a business? Because the good people typically aren't looking for a job. And then, so how do we present well from a brand? How do we attract those people, and where are they?
You have just put so many big questions there.
Sorry,
how do we attract them?
Three in one question.
How do we attract them? How do we kind of position the brand to get those people's attention that are in jobs and they're happy? But then also the third one of how do we, I kind of think as you're talking, Jay, where are they? Where are the good people? Well, let's start first at home. We've got good people in the business. How are we developing them? How are we keeping the people we have? Before we start thinking about who's out there, what are we doing here internally? If you've got 20 staff, if you've got 100 staff, we often look to the people we want in before we focus on what are we doing with the people we have.
Because they've already got your knowledge. They already know how the business works.
And how much does it cost to recruit versus retain? How much are we spending on that? So first and foremost, focus on the people you have and developing them instead of buying in the talent. Let's do this first. And for me, that is, again, it so comes back to culture. Listening to what your people want. Do a culture survey. Gauge with your team. What do you guys want here? What's working well? What isn't working well? That then gives you the data to improve stuff. And then from there, we start thinking about how do we attract great people. But in order to get great people in, we already have to have great people here and now. So let's focus on that first. Then in terms of how do we market ourselves to get that talent in, let's just talk about one basic way, the job ad. The job ads that we're putting out are so boring. They're so boring. It's demonstrates X, Y, and Z skill. I think let's totally shake that up and write something that makes people go, ooh, this sounds fun. This sounds cool. This sounds like a team I want to be a part of. To me, that's a really, really simple way to stand out, because someone looking for a job, let's just say you're a builder and you're looking for a chippy, and they're where are they? I guess goes to your question, where are they? If you're going to recruit, we want your job ad to stand out from every other person who's looking for the same talent. So we want to sell it to what matters to them. And for most people right now, if you've got millennials or Gen Zs, they're looking for career growth. They want to know that you are going to grow them in their career, that you're going to invest in them. So focus on those things. Now, I know the fear, and people listening might be thinking, oh, okay, I get this, but also how do I not breed entitlement? Well, we'll get to that. Let's park that because we'll talk about entitlement. But I want you to sell the things that you're going to do for your team. Now, we need to make sure we actually deliver on them, but we grow people here. Are you paying market or above? And if you're not paying market rate, that's fine, but you need to have other things that supplement that. So you might give people lots of flexibility, and that's your point of difference. Whatever that is, really emphasize your point of difference and the value you offer to that candidate, and then write your job ad in a way that expresses the brand. If your brand, I think, again, going back to your brand, drive, energy, adventure, there's some of the vibes I get. So I'd be really selling that. I'd be saying, hey, if you want a career adventure and you want to show up with energy and you want to learn a stack of stuff about business, come to see Business Solutions. We got you covered. And you're selling the things that they're getting out of it.
Going to Jay's question about attracting, though, Have you found ways of dealing with a reputation that precedes the organisation where people aren't interested because they know, and it's funny how within industries they talk, and so people will be like, don't go there, it's full of gossip. Don't go there, the boss will make you feel this way. Have you found ways of dealing with reputations where the culture is known to be bad and people won't apply?
Yeah, that's a deep work. If you have a reputation, and the funny thing about reputation, it's often hard to know how you're perceived externally. And it's especially hard if you don't survey your staff. It's especially hard if you're not getting feedback from the people who do work for you. The other way you can understand is through exit interviews. When people finish up, how do we actually...
Do they work?
If you ask the right questions...
I can't be bothered to telling them the truth. Here you go. You guys are awesome. See you later.
Yeah, you're relying on the person to be honest, I suppose, aren't you? But if you ask the right questions and if you want to hear the answers as the boss, then surely those exit interviews can help.
If you want to hear the answers, to me, that's the difference, Dan. Like, do you want to know? And for us as business leaders, it can be painful to expose yourself to some of those truths. But if you don't, you will get to that stage of, well, I can't get any new people in the building because people know us for X, Y, and Z reasons. And, so it's a huge thing. And I love how you've articulated that. How do we identify our reputation externally? Well, we start, again, I keep coming back to start first internally. If we want to attract great people, how are we keeping the people we have? And then how are we listening to our people to go, well, what do we need to change? And then there's some really key employer branding work that can really help.
Do you know what? I got my staff one time, we grabbed the whiteboard, there's a big whiteboard, and I said, let's write down all the things I suck at. And let's write down all the things that the business sucks at. And I think we were 5 whiteboards in, and I was like, come on, guys, let's settle down.
What else? What do we got? What else?
But it hurts, but you went, hang on a sec, we can fix this.
And did you listen?
I did. I had to cop it. But what it did, it gave you an opportunity to go, yep, we can fix that. Yep, we can fix that. Yep, that's cool. Or actually, we need to talk about that. But that's what you're talking about. You got to be real and you got to be vulnerable, and it's painful. But how do you fix it? You got to know about it, like you said.
You have to know first. And I love that process of engaging the team in that, because otherwise we're just hypothesizing. And the further you go up in a leadership role, if you're in a bigger business, the more disconnected you get from what's happening. That's just a natural dynamic. So how do you bridge that disconnect? Well, you have to create systems and practices that allow for people to share. And I think your point of you have to make it safe. You have to make these conversations safe. Like, show that, hey, we genuinely want to improve. Here's the things we want to do to improve as a team, but I also need your voice in this space. And get your team to shape the values. You might need a full values makeover and reset, but get your team to help you craft them. Don't just do it in isolation. That's the beauty of team. You've got this whole group of people around you. Why not leverage them to actually co-design this culture that you want to create?
I'm glad you mentioned talking to your teams about the culture, because you talked earlier about diagnosing effectively what you're tolerating, what you walk past. But I can tell you right now, when a boss assesses their culture versus what the teams say about culture, the bosses are often surprised by what their teams are saying about the culture. That blows my mind that some managers, supervisors, bosses, CEOs have no idea what is happening at the grassroots.
Oh, totally. And we sometimes subconsciously or consciously insulate ourselves from those painful truths. And if we want to build an epic culture, well, we need to just confront them. I think it's Jim Collins in his book that says, confront the brutal reality. So how often do we do that? Because we get so focused on the task. Like, I'm focused on getting this goal and this goal and this goal, instead of focusing on how do I build a team that own those goals so that I don't have to own them. Like, I'm not having to do them or deliver them, but I've created an environment where everyone knows what those goals are, and how they live it out is through our culture and through our values.
Do you know what's cool? So you referenced Jim Collins, right? He's known for a lot of things, but he is about team. Let's get the right people on, let them set the direction. So here's the thing, it takes the pressure off the owner of the business if you get the right people to begin with. Second part is you go, great, you set the direction. Guess what? It takes the pressure off you because they've set the direction. What do you get? Buy-in as well. So it's so cool, but it's so hard for people to accept that because they want to look for people with their vision, their way, their driving. Are you on? Are you off? Like that's that. Probably next question is old school versus new school. You know, that old school person that's like, I'm the boss. I'm doing it this way. You're in. Pull your finger out. This is what you got to do. Like. Do you still see that a lot? And are they able to change those people?
I think everyone's able to change. It's, again, coming back to, well, do they get that feedback? So does that leader, you mentioned hearing from your team about your own things that you want to fix.
Cried myself to sleep that night.
I can imagine. Well, you had 5 whiteboards on it, right?
That's right.
How do you understand your own blind spots as a leader? And certainly command and control, old school styles, they're out. And with good reason. People, especially Gen Z and millennial employees, which we all know, they don't want that form of leadership. They want a collaborative leadership. They want to be able to influence the direction of the business. They also want autonomy. And these things are hard. As a business owner, it's hard to facilitate that. Right? Like for so many business owners that I talk to and clients who are saying, oh, my team, they're just so entitled. They want so much from me. And so that's a genuine problem that we have to face. But the reality of what the workforce wants right now is they want that autonomy. They want to be able to contribute and they want career growth. So command and control styles are not conducive with what those younger generations want. So unless we shift our style, we're not going to be able to engage and retain those people.
Let's tackle entitlement. You've mentioned it a few times now. How on earth do you deal with staff that are feeling that sort of sense of entitlement after, whether it be years in the business, it might be, you mentioned the old school CEO, the old school boss. I came straight to mind with the old school receptionist or something, so, someone who has just been there as part of the business for 28 years. I'm entitled.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting you drew the receptionist because I'm more thinking about the Gen Z employees that want fast track.
I'm 3 months in. I want to pay rise and I want to be the manager.
Yeah, there's
already.
two sides to the entitlement. I've passed probation / I've had long service leave 3 times over.
Yeah, you really nailed it. Okay. Excuse me. So, entitlement to me is not an attitude problem. It is an expectations problem. And that's a mindset shift for us as leaders. It actually is a really helpful way to look at it because instead of going, this Gen Z person who's coming in who wants a bloody promotion and a pay rise in 3 months, that's about their expectations. And you can shift expectations. Whereas if we think about it as an attitude problem, it feels harder to change and it causes us to write them off. Whereas what I want you to do, if you've got an entitled person on your team, and most people will have at least one, I want you to focus on resetting those expectations. So this is when we get really clear and we want to make it so obvious to people about what they can and can't expect from us. So when they walk in the door, in their initial chats, here's some things I'd be saying. So in their onboarding process of a new staff member, I'd be saying, hey, Joe, here's what you can expect from me. Number 1, I'm going to give you honest feedback. We're going to have monthly chats and I'm going to be super upfront with you because that's how I'm going to help you grow. You're going to have your pay reviewed in 12 months. Doesn't mean you get a pay rise, but I will review it.
So don't ask in 3 months. Yep.
Exactly. So you're setting the expectations. We don't have a hierarchical structure here, so there's not a lot of promotion opportunities. But what I can give you is these learning opportunities. I'm going to send you to this course. I'm going to send you to this program. And while we don't pay super corporate rates, you have heaps of flexibility here. So you can see what I've done there is set these expectations up front. And it saves so many headaches. And I do it in onboarding. But if you've already got existing team members with entitlement, well, come 2023, you go, let's have a team reset. We're going to reset some of the expectations. And what you're doing is you're answering questions that employees don't feel safe to ask. Like a lot of employees are interested in when will I be considered for a pay rise, but they don't feel like they can ask that question. So by putting it out there, you remove the entitlement, you clarify the expectation. And if they're not keen on that, well, you can have that discussion, but you're actually bringing those things to the surface so that you can address them.
Like that. That's pretty cool. That's simple as well. Everyone can do that.
Yes.
And it's a checklist. Is that something that you in your business, and you're a coach or you're a mentor or someone helps, I guess educate people in this space? Is that one of the big things? Do you give people a checklist, and obviously you got to educate them, but is it something that you help?
Yeah.
Hey, this is the step. These are the steps. This is how to do
Absolutely.
that.
And the big thing that I do is this thing called a culture reset, where we get the whole team together and we have this. We do the culture survey for people, so we get everyone's input, we get some data on that, and then we gather the team, we go, hey, you're all going to get to shape this culture. We're going to shape it out how we want it. And we define those values and we define the behaviours. And then we go through, well, what are the risk points? And then with that leader or business owner, sit down and go, here's those pain points. Like we've got a few people with entitlement issues. Here's your go-to guide to have that conversation. And even, it sounds silly, but I love giving people guides for conversations. It's like one of my favourite things, because a lot of leaders struggle with tough conversations. How do I tell this person that they're talking too much? Or how do I tell this person that they're not owning or driving their work and it's falling over to other team members? And so giving them the guide of going, here's how you talk this issue through, here's how you phrase it. And then they can walk in and feel confident that actually I can do this. I can talk to this person and address it and help them grow.
So you're an HR professional. Your organisation should be smooth sailing. You should have the perfect team. Your culture should be amazing. No doubt there have been some challenges along the way as a business owner. What are the challenges?
Oh, so many challenges. I think it goes back to your point, Jay, and I know we kind of probably skimmed over it, is if you've got a humming culture and it's really healthy, but you're growing, so you're fast-paced, you're experiencing this fast-paced growth and you need to hire in new people. So it's not like you have any problems with the culture, but it's how do I find them? And I think that goes to what you were asking before. How do we find people quickly in that growth phase? That for me is a massive challenge. That for so many businesses is a challenge. One of the things I'd encourage people, and what I've looked for in myself is, and I actually think I might have learnt this when you came on our podcast.
Well, this is dangerous. Look out.
So you talked about on our podcast, My Millennial Career, how you're out there looking for people all the time.
Yep. Interviewing every single day. Yeah.
What, just in the street? Just
Well,
so if you meet someone and you're like, hello.
One of our best, and I don't mind saying that, at sea is Matty, and he was working in a cafe at the locale.
And you said,
So,
I
"Hey,
see potential.
Do you want a job?
Wow.
Yep.
And he was out of
And,
the hospitality industry and into building industry.
Don't get me wrong. Like the first 6 months, I'm like, oh, what have I done? And we've talked about this, but he runs one of the most successful parts of our business now, and he's brilliant. But this is the thing. You see people in the street, don't you? And you see somebody who's just got a great attitude, great customer service, wants to help you, and you're like, that's appealing. And that's appealing to your clients. So, yeah, sorry. Anyway, I love it.
I mean, that really impacted me because we often think about recruitment at the point we need it. So when we're in that growth phase, we're like, oh, crap, I need 2 new people. And instead, what we want to be thinking about is I'm always interviewing, like you said, Jay, and for me, I'm often looking for people that I know have those growth, that they have a growth mindset, they have that ability to identify their own gaps and skills gaps so that I'm not going to have all those awkward conversations helping them to become more self-aware. And the technical side, I think, is trainable, but I want to be able to get that culture fit right. And so for me, going back to Dan, your question that you opened with of what's the big challenge, it's how do you grow quickly and staff the growth? And I don't have an answer, but I think I'm going to just take a leaf out of your book and go, always be interviewing.
Rather than just interviewing quickly when you need it.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you know what? We say that with a lot of builders too, because there's you're always needing more people. Whether you need them now or whether you need them later, you always at some point need them. So it's great to have a good bank of people ready.
Well, and you're always meeting
call
them.
upon. What's that?
On work sites, you're always meeting them.
Always meeting people, always needing people. But anyway, so here's the thing. You're great at what you do. You bring great energy. We love, everything you do. Let's be real for a second though. Work-life balance. What's that been like?
What is work-life balance?
Set the scene a little bit. Family person, kids, partner who runs his own business. Life must be pretty full on. Yeah,
life is full on. And I feel, oh my gosh, I'm laughing because I'm like, where do I begin? How do I answer this question? I'm not a big believer in work-life balance. I don't subscribe to that logic. I think flow and blend resonates more with me. So how do I have a flow between my work and my family life? I've got 2 little kids. So Bowie, he's 2 nearly, and Sonny is 5. And Sam runs a concrete pump business, and so he's on 6 days a week, so it's just nuts. And I have tried to find that flow where, for me, I rocked in here and I'm realised I've got like digger trucks in my bag and nappies, and you
never know when you'll need them.
Yeah, well, you never know when you're going to need that little digger for some kind of issue or crisis or tantrum. I have found it challenging this year. If I just be really vulnerable, I found it really difficult this year to work out how do you do it all well. And I think what I've come to terms with is you can't do it all well. So what am I sacrificing? And for me, the confronting brutal realities is, well, I'm not going to sacrifice my family for the job. So what parts of the job have to go? What parts do I get rid of, not do, outsource, so that I can make sure that my main game, which is my family, don't suffer at the expense of this career?
They're the reason you make money, are they?
Oh, well, that's the thing. Do you serve your business or does your business serve you? And I honestly, if I look at this last year and I think about that, I'd be saying I serve my business. My business doesn't serve me, and I need that to flip. And so coming into this zone of, okay, well, I want to reset how I do my work. I need my business to serve me. So some things have to go, and they have to go somewhere else. I have to hire. I have to do all that stuff to make that happen. But yeah, all that to say, it's bloody hard.
Would you be better off working for someone though? Does the flow come because you're your own boss, or would you have better flow if you just work 9 to 5, 3 days a week and had the kids every other day?
So how deep can we go? I won't go too deep, but I am a big fan, if you haven't already got this, of values. You need core values in your business and core values personally. And for me, one of my values is autonomy. So I need to thrive at work. I have to have autonomy. And that's so that I can do the school pickups. That's so I can do all the stuff that I want to do. And also I just like working sometimes at 10 at night, and I just think that's how I want to work. If I went back into employment, I don't think I'd get that autonomy met. And so my values don't align with that lifestyle anymore. So no, I like what I'm doing, but the reason I can make that decision is because I know my own personal values.
Just on the counter to that, some people value security higher than that, and a constant wage.
Lack of flexibility. You're right.
That's it.
I agree.
So it can go both ways, and it's up to each individual how they like to operate.
But how cool to hear that when your values align with your job, you're a happier person. And that comes back to the start of our conversation, right? When you are hiring people with the values that align with your organisation, you're going to get a better staff member.
Yeah, and even, going so far as to asking your team, what do they value personally? Because that's when you can start to understand those values mismatch kind of dynamics. Like if you've got someone on your team and they value stability, but you're in an environment that's really changing all the time, well, then maybe they're not going to be a great fit for you. And it's the same process as me working out, well, is self-employment for me? Well, yes, because I prioritise autonomy.
It's interesting. So you I think you called it what was it? Flow, something in flow?
Flow or blend.
Flow and blend in life. But here's the thing, you have choice. You can choose to do something or choose not to. And that's the great part about autonomy and running your own business. I guess the big part is, as long as you can identify your big rocks and go, I'm just going to do that, and that'll equal an outcome of X, and I'm happy with that. Whatever happens after that, that's fine. That's what's, I think, the ultimate balance or that goal that you can achieve is, I'm just going to do what I can do and the rest will look after itself. Because if you try to control everything, you end up at that crazy cat lady, I reckon. That's what happens. You cannot do that. So well done. I mean, for you to identify that and realise that really early is pretty special. So yeah, hats off to you.
Oh, thank you. I love that about choice. We all have, often we think that choice has been removed, but we've all made those choices, whether we're conscious about it or not.
Is a great business luck or hard work? Because I reckon Boldside sounds like a great place to work. My application is
well,
getting
you know
drawn
what?
up
I'm
as
always
business.
interviewing.
I don't think you get past the interview. No.
She's always interviewing.
I'm always on the lookout.
So is Boldside a great business because it's luck or hard work?
It's definitely hard work. Oh my gosh, it's felt like such hard work this year. And there's elements of luck, but I often think that luck comes out. It actually often comes out because of hard work. So you've worked really hard and then you might have a little lucky break somewhere. But it's because you've already done those hard yards and then something drops into your lap. So I would go with hard work.
HR was my second choice on the university application form. Journalism was number one, but I've really enjoyed talking to you today and have maybe a little regret about maybe missing out on doing some HR, but that could be my second career because, us millennials love another career.
You need a career change.
Shelley, thanks for being part of the podcast.
Thanks so much.